The hardest part of running a business is accepting that I can do everything right and things can still go wrong. Whenever we add people into the mix of almost anything, it's just going to change the outcome and change what we think is going to happen. And hopefully for the better, but sometimes not. But what if we could at least reduce our resistance to that change and maybe even better, get our people more aligned and engaged during these transitions? Well, our guest today, Tim Rhode, is an expert on leading change. After 30 years of running his own successful business, where we're going to get to hear how incredible it was here in a couple minutes, he's now called by CEOs and leaders to help us with more tools and skills and knowledge on how to lead through change. Tim, welcome to How I Turned the Corner.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here. And I got to tell you that I love your podcast. I've listened to several episodes and I love your energy. I love the theme. I love the way that you bring the best out of your guests. So hope you do the same with me.
I hope so too. Yes. I've interviewed a lot of people and I'm an expert in my field. I mean, I really am. And I rarely walk away from the interviews learning something new. And that is not at all a fault to any of the guests I've had in the past. It's just a lot of the things that we talk about are things I considered and tried myself. But as I was studying you, I immediately learned something. And that is the sign behind you, which for those of my listeners that are watching, you can see it now. It says all progress requires change. And I wrote it down, Tim. I have it now. Look, on my own little reminder sheet, I wrote this exact thing down to remind me all progress requires change. So thank you for the gift that you gave me because I love that as a theme because you're absolutely right. Like we can't get better in this world if we do not expect there to be some change.
Well, it's true. It's what I call a truth bomb. And there are many of them in many industries. You have many. And when I find that they act as like guideposts or mile markers for people once you realize that. There's such an inherent resistance to change. And but when you think about it, all progress requires change. What gets better without change? So there's this paradox there because people tend to resist change. You hear about that. You bring up the word change. One of the first things you hear from people is, "Oh, change is harder." I don't know with change. People struggle with change. Some people, it's 80% resistance, 10% passive, maybe 10% of the people lean into it, right? So those are terrible odds. If all progress requires change, it's
Hmm.
something that people inherently resist. Not good, right? But people will do what they do well. So if we found a way to help people succeed with change or to lead change successfully, make it easy for them, right? Then think what would happen to progress, no matter what the endeavor.
Hmm. Yeah. So, a big theme of this podcast is to help people, help leaders see that they can't do things the way they've always done it. I mean, I do think that 50% of what we've always done as leaders is still probably relevant, but then 50% is not. And I really, really see this when it comes to change and change management. In the 90s and in the early 2000s, at least when I was experiencing change as a younger employee, I felt like it was just like mandated. You'd get a memo or you'd get an email. Maybe there'd be some communication from management, but I mean, we didn't have any chance to affect the change as an employee. That does not work anymore. That style of change management is just like people are so resistant to that. And so when we think about bringing people on board with change, can you talk and share a little bit around how you kind of help people overcome that resistance to change, and especially thinking about like the modern, like the way we need to lead now in this world?
Sure. Well, that's a fairly wide path. It's not narrow. Helping people to succeed or look forward to change, to be even a contributor to change in your organization, I think comes back to something that you talk about all the time, and that's culture, right? So if it's part of your culture, you help people understand up front that all this, what I have behind me, all progress requires change. And so you can expect it. Let's get good at it. Let's welcome it, right? And so we talk with them from the beginning. First of all, we look for people that seem to be open to contributing to change, not put off by it. So it starts in the recruiting process, in the role descriptions. It starts when we're interviewing people, when we're talking with them, even when we're bringing them, onboarding them, or on, what did you call it? You don't call it onboarding, you call it
On
on well.
belonging.
On
Yeah.
belonging. Love that. Love that, right? So as you're helping them belong, you say, look, while people resist change in other organizations, we welcome it here. And it's not because we're erratic or we're constantly shifting around. We're not chasing squirrels here, but we all commit to getting better and helping our customers better, or whatever, however you want to frame it. So I think from that very first interaction, from where you look for them, the attributes you look for, the conversations you have with them when you bring them in, and then the way that you actually live that is really key. If you run into resistance to change, it helps to understand what's behind it. There's typically four or five main drivers behind resistance to change, and it usually doesn't come from the person on the receiving end. It comes from the person on the sending end. We're doing something that's off-putting. So I think you work on making sure people agree and understand that all progress requires change. And around here, we love that. We want people that are going to be part of the solution.
Hmm. Can you talk a little bit more then about that, the ways that leaders can be off-putting with change? I mean, I can definitely throw out a couple ideas. Like, again, just this sort of command and control, do it because I told you to do it, is extremely off-putting. That's an
Yeah.
obvious one.
Yeah.
What's some other examples of that though?
Well, it could be poor communication, which is, communication. Here's another truth bomb for you. Poor communication is the root of every problem. Every problem. We could stay on here for an hour. You name problems, and we'll trace it right back to a communication issue. So if you're communicating poorly, and to some extent, it ties back to command and control. I say you do. That doesn't work so well anymore. Helps if people want to know why. You can another one of the other things is you don't add meaning to it. So people feel like they're doing something differently and they don't understand why. People want to make a difference. And if you can connect what you're asking them to do now or differently with how important it is, or how it's going to help them grow, or the company grow, or the customers do better, that helps to eliminate or reduce that resistance. Think about it. When's the last time you were asked to do something that you thought was senseless or useless, or you didn't understand, right? It's usually, if you do it at all, it's going to be done with marginal appreciation, right? And
Hmm.
it's not going to be done extremely well. Where if you understand the importance of it, you're going to give it everything that you've got. So those are just a few of the reasons why that, or people aren't recognized for the effort they're putting in. So one of the ways to reduce or eliminate resistance to change is to reward people for doing things better, doing them well. It doesn't mean you have to bribe people to do their job, but if you're looking to have them do something different, a reward could be recognition in front of their peers, or appreciation from you, or just something about letting them know how much you like the trend that they're setting, the example they're giving for everybody else. When leaders leave that out, they're asking for resistance to change. They're actually spreading the seeds of resistance in their organization. They're helping the weeds to grow, right?
Hmm. Yeah, that's so true. I feel a little bit like the newer way of doing change management in this, with this new incoming generation, as well as just all of the things we survived and dealt with through COVID, has also really been bringing a lot more buy-in just from the multiple parties. And so when you think about, leading, especially a major change initiative, what do you think about, engaging and bringing in people who are even the naysayers earlier on in the process?
Oh, absolutely. You are spot on. So, some of the truths about leading successful change are that people support what they help to create.
Hmm.
And and it starts as early as just letting somebody know you're thinking about something, or hey, we've got this change we need to make. I'd really like to get your input on it. I know this is going to affect you or the others around you, or if you really want to win them over, you say, look, Kendra, I know you're not going to have a problem with this, but I want to make sure that this rubs off well on the rest of the team. Now, I may not know that at all about you, but kind of using an assumptive approach here and saying, I know that you're going to be fine with this, but we've got this change we want to make. I really want to make sure it goes along well. Would you mind giving me a few minutes of your time? I'd love to get your perspective on what we should do to make sure this goes well. That's involvement, right? You can go to members of your team. You could go to let's take it in a business owner's context. You can go to a bank and you could say, look, I've got this, I've been thinking about expanding, or I've been thinking about remodeling my this, or I'm thinking about whatever, refinancing, I don't care what it is. And you could say, I'd like to get your input before I get started on this. Let me know what you think we can do to help make sure that that succeeds. So it's a change. You're looking for a change in your relationship with your finance source. And by getting them involved, they're going to be less reluctant or less resistant. They're going to support it, in fact, because they've played a hand in it.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that
Like
makes a ton of
people
sense.
people support what they help to create. So get them involved. Whether you're looking for their input, you're asking for them to help you implement it. I've taken some of the most difficult people, the people that you know are going to drag their heels, are going to, I've come into organizations as a consultant or an advisor, or even runs I'm running myself. And I know that these people are going to dig in. And I'll say, you know what? We've got to get this done, and it's really important, and here's why. And I'm really looking forward to your help. Can I count on you to and fill them in? I need you to show up earlier. I need you to take this person under your wing, or I need you to make sure we get to here by Friday. Those are all examples. And they go because they feel valued by me. They understand the meaning. They appreciate the fact that I came to them for help. And the resistance just doesn't happen. In fact, they become like I pride myself on turning resistors into supporters.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's fantastic. And again, I can't emphasize enough on how important it is to do this now. If you're leading any kind of a change initiative, especially if it's going to have a significant financial impact on the business, meaning you're about to make a big investment, or if it doesn't happen, you're going to lose a lot of money, either or, it is super critical that you get all these folks, especially the naysayers, involved early. And so
Absolutely.
it just is not going to work any other way. Like I have to emphasize that again. Like it's just not going to work. Um, so can you share then a little bit more? Let's just talk a little bit more about communication though as well, because um, for me, one of the things that I've feel is missing often with communication is context and being able to also put the change in context. Now, you mentioned earlier, it's important that you get clear around like the why we're doing it. Um, but can you just help me kind of land the plane a little bit more around communication and context? Like, what's your feelings on that?
Sure. Well, like I said, poor communication is the root of every problem. So if a leader is going to become good at one thing, in addition to leading successful change, being a great communicator is at the top of the list. So context is really key. I think there are a number of things to consider. One is who you're talking with and in what order, right? We all know people who, if they're the third or fourth person to hear about it, you're going to get resistance, reluctance. They're going to be offended, right? So you got to think about who is it that you need to talk with, and at what stage, what message are you going to send, and that message could include that context. It could be what is it that needs to happen, and then why does it need to happen? What's the context around it? Is it urgent? Is it gradual? Is it something that is going to make a massive difference in the way we're operating, or something subtle? What is the context of the change? So I don't want to use your question in the definition. So let me back up a step. If anybody, you talked about how half of what we've been doing doesn't matter anymore, especially with AI. Like how it's never been more true than right. Everything is shifting, right? So anybody who's spent any time learning or studying prompt engineering, and we've all heard that word by right now. You don't just go to AI and ask it a question. You need to engineer a prompt. What's your role, right? What's the goal? What's the context? So if AI needs it, what about people? I mean, this just reinforces what you're talking about. If you want to get a good answer from AI, you've got to give it context, constraints, limitations. So those are some of the context things you're talking about. Like we don't have much time to get this done. We have 3 months to get this done. We have to make sure we do this in a way that these people aren't offended or these people are on board. Here's what's worked before. This is what we haven't tried yet. I mean, these are all examples of context that I think fit into perhaps what you're talking about. It, the more people know about what you want or need their help with, the the more they can understand. You know, this is maybe a good way to kind of bring this back full circle. Communication is not sending, it's understanding.
Hmm.
Like the synonym for communication is understanding. So it's not about what you say or what you write or that you sent. God, when people say like I ask them what happened, well, I sent them an email. I just want to, well, I want to throttle them, right? Because that accomplishes nothing, right? It's like throwing a note in a bottle and tossing it out in the ocean. I sent them an email, right? The job is to make sure that the other people understand. And that's something we have to take responsibility for. We take 100% responsibility for the other person understanding. Now that's a bridge to good communication. So
Hmm.
I don't want to go on too long. I could rail for an hour about communications.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I think it's a really important part of it, and I do think that a lot of us, and I will put myself in that category, will not think through those things you just said, not think through how to describe the why around something, the budget, the constraints. I really like that idea of the prompt engineer for change management. If you're going through some kind of a big change, like almost think about it as how would you prompt AI? Because your team and your employees are going to need as much of that context probably.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great way to look at it, actually. I like that a lot. So let me set up, I should have done this a little earlier. I'd like to just have our listeners hear a little bit about your background too. So can you just share quickly like what brought you as to being even an expert on this? Like give us the 30 years here of your incredible experience as a leader.
Well, your introduction is very flattering. It wasn't a straight line, I can tell you that. But I love the theme and the title of your podcast, like turning the corner, especially the way that you related to what's happened in businesses. That's exactly how I got started. I did a variety of jobs, when I was younger, and one of my first true leadership jobs was turning around a business where I was 2,800 miles from home. I had no choice but to turn this business around. I've been losing money for decades, and I there was no money to do renovations. That the business was on its knees, and the only option I had was to turn around the the tribe of people that I had there running it, and some of them were questionable, right? So there were some winners in the group, but some weren't. And we took that business from losing $500,000 a year to breaking even in just under 12 months. And in 12 more months, we were making $500,000 a year. It was $1 million turnaround. Happened to be a tennis and fitness club in suburban Washington, D.C. And through that transformation, not only did other businesses in the area start taking notice and wanted to know what we were doing, but I was offered a partnership and went from being like a paid manager to a partner in this particular business, which launched a 35-year career in the health and wellness industry. I began working with other companies while we stayed in the business, and my wife and I traveled. She's from the industry as well. We traveled and coached business leaders to solve problems in a variety of different cities and states. We did some work overseas, Australia and the UK. And after several years of that, we decided to open our own business in the health and wellness industry. We kind of built a new business model back in the mid 90s, and it took off like crazy. I think I told you before we got on air that we grew that from scratch, zero employees, zero members, to more than 10,000 members and 350 employees in three locations in just over 10 years. In 3 or 4 years, we were leading the market. So in each of those circumstances, whether it was my first turning the corner with that struggling business, helping other business owners in the industry turn their businesses around, or launching our own business successfully, creating that culture we were talking about, that where people welcome change. Like, where is change more necessary than in the health and wellness? You got people coming in struggling with their health. Something needs to change, right?
Hmm.
All
Yeah.
progress, if they're going to make progress, they've got to make some changes. We had to be great at helping people make and stick with changes. So every step of my career, I've been turning a corner, right? Even when we exited the business in 2015, And since then, I've been working with businesses across industries to do the same thing, how to make their business more profitable, more valuable, and easier to run with the principles that we're talking about here today.
Hmm. That's great. Congratulations, Tim. I mean that
Thank you.
that's a tough industry too because there's a lot of people, a lot of players. I mean, I'm from the Colorado area and every corner has a gym. So,
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
I can't imagine getting into the
It's
fitness
evolved.
industry.
It's evolved through many iterations in the last 40 years for sure.
Uh-huh. That's incredible. Yeah. Well, and I like the analogy too, back to just even the experience that the individual members are having, back to the conversation we were having around change. Because you're right, you have got to get them even at that individual level bought into the change they want for themselves, even. So you're definitely an expert in this.
Well, again, I appreciate the flattering, but I would tell you I've got a lot to learn still, and I learn more every single day. But one of the things that differentiated us in that industry, our mission from day one was to make sure that you actually got healthy and fit. It was completely upside down from what the industry model was: come in, join, commit to pay your dues, and then either hope you don't come or you're on your own. And I was in the business. I wasn't in the fitness business before I took over that struggling club. I landed there. I had no choice. That was like my one option was to make this business go. And I just used what I knew about people and and a lot of trial and error to turn that thing around. But I was there maybe 6 months and I was like, what a dumb business model is this? Like what other industry gets away with this? Would you go to get tires for your car, leave them your money up front, and then when you come back later in the day, maybe you got tires, maybe you don't? Like that's what the fitness industry was doing. And so after thinking about it and working with other businesses for a while, we thought, what if we made it our mission to make sure that people actually did get healthy and fit? And that's what we did for 20 years.
Hmm.
I was challenged by it. I mean, some of my colleagues in the industry, smart people, founders of the industry would challenge that and say, you know, how are you going to, you can't do that. How are you going to make sure that people get healthy and fit? And, what are you going to do? You can't take the fork out of their hands right when they go home. And my answer to them was always the same. We're going to do whatever we can. And they know when they walk in the door that we're here to make sure that they get healthy and fit. That intention, that culture, that communicating that to your point, is what made the difference in that business model. And we went from zero to hero in that industry in very short amount of time.
Hmm. Yeah. And I think that that ties back to a lot of the themes we've had over the years with this podcast too, around how critical it is to be clear on that why also, and then to be hiring for those behaviors and firing when they're not demonstrated and managing toward it and, coaching, training, all of those things against those expectations you have for your people. And how in the world could you hire like a fitness instructor to come in who isn't bought into that mission that you just said? We are going
Yeah,
to help you be healthy and fit. I mean, can you imagine hiring someone and they were like, eh?
right.
I mean, that wouldn't
We
even make sense either. You've already got people who are so passionate about that themselves. So,
Yeah, and
yeah.
it's a culture. I mean, I like to say a culture is like the weather, right? And it's either working for you or it's working against you. Like it's a lot easier to enjoy the day when you got a warm, spring breeze and the birds are chirping. The weather's great, right? As opposed to trying to throw a picnic in a hurricane or something awful, right? Gloomy or whatever. So you create the culture in your organization by it's fundamentally it's everything you do. It's your intention, it's your communication, it's your action, it's what you follow through on.
Hmm. Well, so now that you've been teaching and helping people with change, I understand that you have also some tools to offer out to the audience here, which I'm excited to look at myself. But
Yeah, I
I know
do.
there's,
Yep.
a couple crash courses that you even have on this.
When so I was like a closet author for years. I had ideas for books. I had ideas for about maybe 30 books. And I finally, after we sold the business, I had some time and I had the means. And so I thought, I'm going to write a book, but which one should I start with? And I went to my list of 30. It was daunting. I narrowed it down to like my top five and then my top three. And then from there, I thought, well, if I could only write one book that would help people, especially people in business more than anything, what would it be? And it was a sleeper. Didn't jump out at me at first, but it came down to this, to leading successful change. Because all progress requires change. And if I could help people do one thing, it would be that they would be able to lead successful change. So I wrote a book and I called it Changing Lanes for Business. And what it is it's It simplifies leading change. People make change too complicated. This is in the book, right? So all these change models that are out there, you either have to go back to school or you're going to fall asleep while you're learning about them. People need something simple. And I believe that people already know how to do this. If you know how to drive and you can get from, around the block or down the road or across town, you already have a good model for change. So I wound up writing this book. It actually turned into a parable by the time I was done. And and it's called Changing Lanes for Business. It breaks down change into four simple steps. From that, I launched a coaching program that I offer hybrid online. I also created a digital version. And then with that, this is what yeah, I'd be happy to let you offer this to your listeners. It's a course on what we talked about earlier, how to reduce or overcome resistance to change. And it's five simple solutions that business leaders can use to help either eliminate or reduce the resistance they're running into. So it all comes with that. It all sort of flows from that simple approach to leading successful change. So I'm happy to give you the link and you would make that available. They can get it online,
Yeah.
and I'd love to hear what they think of it, see if it's been helpful or not.
Yeah, that's great. Well, we will add that into the show notes for any of you that are listening, and then also into the notes on YouTube for any of you watching. So, thank you so much, Tim. That's very generous of you. I'm excited to see that content. And so, and you're right. I mean, I went through a methodology, the Cotter methodology for change management.
Oh,
I mean,
yes.
this is how bad it was for me. I bought the book, I
Mhm.
bought the ebook, and I even
Mhm.
listened to it, and I was like, "Somehow I'm gonna slog my way through this book."
Yes.
I mean, I've never in my
Yeah.
life done that, and I mean, it was so laborious to read, but I'm grateful for the methodology, like, it helped me definitely with, a couple of our own initiatives, but man, there's gotta be a simpler approach, so thank
Cotter is
you.
brilliant. Cotter is
Yeah.
brilliant, and he's actually sort of the godfather of change. People look to Cotter's models for change all over the place, but your experience is common. There's just so much to it. Your company needs to change now or maybe yesterday, and you're going to get sent to go learn about Cotter. Good luck. It's going to take you months to get it to the point where you know it well enough to start handing it off to anybody else. If you're in HR, my guess is you were a translator, right? And
Mhm.
you were trying to help other people succeed with change. If you can drive from here to the gas station and back, you've got a model for leading successful change. And that's really what's in the book. It doesn't mean don't look at the others, but hey, there's no reason for you to fear change or struggle with change because the four things that it takes to lead successful change, you do every time you get behind the wheel.
Mhm. Well, I am excited to have us all explore that. And so thank you, Tim. I think that's a perfect place to kind of cut us off here. But I can't thank you enough for your time and for sharing your insight for all of us. And we'll see you hopefully soon. And so thank you.
My pleasure. This has been great fun. Thank you so much for having me on. If there's anything I can do to help you or your listeners, just please let me know. I think you have my email address and things. Anybody wants to reach out, I'm happy to chat with them.
Yes, we'll include all of that in the show notes, how to get
All
in
right,
touch with
very good.
you. All right. Thank you, Tim.
All right, you're welcome.